This is our family home now, my sister smirked, sliding a typed contract across the kitchen table. Pay us $20,000 for your share of upkeep, or pack your bags and never come back. My mother chuckled, crossing her arms, while my dad just stared at the floor, letting her handle the dirty work. They thought they had me backed into a corner. They thought I was the naive younger sibling who would break down, cry, and empty her savings account just to keep a roof over her head. But what my sister didn't realize was that I wasn't a guest in this house, and I certainly wasn't her tenant. I reached into my bag, pulled out a manila envelope, and tossed it right onto her contract. The moment my dad opened it and saw my name printed at the top of the original deed, his face went deathly pale. My name is Clara, I'm 27 years old, and until that precise moment at the kitchen table, I actually believed blood was thicker than money. The air in the room was suffocating, heavy with the artificial scent of my sister Chloe's expensive perfume and the underlying stench of pure greed. She sat across from me, tapping her manicured nails against the polished wood before sliding a crisp, printed paper toward my side of the table. Read it, sign it, and pay up, Chloe smirked, her voice dripping with calculated arrogance. $20,000. That's your share for the property upgrades, the structural upkeep, and your back rent for staying under this roof. You have 48 hours to transfer the funds, or you can pack your bags and never come back. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to step in, to put an end to this ridiculous shakedown. Instead, Mom just crossed her arms and let out a dry, dismissive chuckle. She's right, Clara. Your sister is thinking about the family's future. It's time you pull your weight. I turned to my dad. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. He just stared silently at his cold cup of coffee, letting them handle the dirty work. They truly believed they had me trapped. They thought I was still the naive younger sibling who would break down, cry, and empty her life savings just to keep a place to sleep. But they had made one massive, catastrophic mistake. To understand how we ended up at that table, you have to understand the unwritten hierarchy of our family. Chloe was always the golden child. Growing up, if Chloe wanted private dance lessons, a designer wardrobe, or a new car for her 18th birthday, my parents bent over backward to make it happen. Meanwhile, I was the dependable, invisible daughter. From the age of 16, I worked late shifts at a local diner, putting myself through college and building my own savings without asking for a single dime. My parents' reckless spending on Chloe eventually caught up with them. 5 years ago, their financial house of cards completely collapsed. They had quietly fallen behind on mortgage payments, racked up massive credit card debt, and were staring down the barrel of full property foreclosure. They were weeks away from losing the only house we had ever known. They were panicked, desperate, and too proud to admit their failure to Chloe. So my dad came to me in secret, begging for help. He knew I had been living frugally and investing every extra dollar I earned. I loved my parents, despite their favoritism. But I wasn't stupid. I agreed to save them, but only on one condition. I wouldn't just lend them money to throw into a sinking ship. Instead, I quietly arranged to buy out the remaining mortgage and pay off the back taxes in full. Through a private legal arrangement handled by my lawyer, the house was transferred entirely into my name. To protect my parents' pride, I allowed them to keep living there without paying rent, keeping the legal title transfer a secret between my dad, the lawyer, and me. Chloe had no idea. She thought Mom and Dad still owned everything, and that one day, it would all be hers. The morning after Chloe handed me that ridiculous ultimatum, the shift in the house was immediate and toxic. I woke up at 7 a.m. to the sound of heavy footsteps and loud, mocking laughter outside my bedroom door. Chloe had already started treating the place like her personal kingdom. She invited her friends over, playing music at full volume and blatantly moving my personal belongings out of the shared living spaces and into dusty cardboard boxes in the garage. When I tried talking to Mom and Dad privately in the kitchen, hoping sanity would prevail, Mom just shook her head with a dismissive wave. Chloe's fiancé, Marcus, comes from a very wealthy family, Clara, Mom explained, her eyes shining with misguided pride. He wants to remodel the entire main floor to fit his status. Chloe needs that $20,000 to secure the contractor. You're holding your sister back. Dad just stood near the sink, keeping his eyes glued to the backyard, refusing to utter a single word to defend me. Their entitlement was blinding. They genuinely believed that Chloe's potential wealthy marriage trumped my years of quiet sacrifice. By late afternoon on day one of the deadline, Chloe took things even further. I returned from a quick errand to find my bedroom door retrofitted with a brand new electronic keypad lock. Your stuff is in the hallway, Chloe smirked, leaning against the doorframe with her arms folded. Until I see that $20,000 wire transfer, you don't get access to your room, and you certainly don't get the new Wi-Fi code. Consider this a taste of what happens when the 48 hours are up. She thought she was locking me out of her house. She had no idea she was setting a trap for herself. Instead of arguing or causing a scene, I picked up my phone and made a single call to Arthur Vance, the real estate attorney who had handled the original property transfer 5 years ago. Within an hour, I was sitting in his quiet, mahogany-lined office downtown. Arthur placed a fresh, crisp manila folder on the desk between us. Inside were the certified title documents, property tax payment receipts signed exclusively in my name, and the official county land registry records. Every single paper proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I owned every square inch of the house, the land, and everything built on it. Your title is completely unassailable, Clara, Arthur said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the paperwork. Your family has zero legal claim to the property. What your sister is attempting to do, demanding money under threat of locking you out, borders on illegal extortion. I don't want to just stop her, Arthur, I said, my voice cold and steady. I want this ended permanently. Arthur nodded, pulling out a pre-drafted document. Then we execute a formal notice to quit. It's an official eviction order for unauthorized occupants attempting to unlawfully alter and exploit the property. We give them 30 days to vacate or face immediate law enforcement removal. I looked at the document, feeling a strange mix of sadness and absolute relief. I signed my name at the bottom. The 48-hour clock was still ticking, and Chloe was eagerly waiting for her money. She thought she was backing me into a corner, completely unaware that she had walked right into a trap of her own making. The final evening of Chloe's 48-hour ultimatum arrived, and she had transformed the house into a stage for her triumph. She had invited her fiancé, Marcus, and his wealthy parents for a lavish dinner to celebrate their upcoming remodeling plans. I walked into the dining room right as the main course was being served. The table was adorned with candles and fine wine. Chloe looked up, a triumphant smirk plastered across her face. Look who decided to join us, Chloe announced to the table, her tone dripping with fake affection. Clara, I hope you brought what we discussed, or Marcus's father was just offering to help load your boxes into a moving truck. Marcus and his parents chuckled politely, completely unaware of the malice beneath her words. My mother smiled approvingly, while my dad stared intently at his plate, sweating under the chandelier lights. I have your answer right here, Chloe, I said calmly, stepping up to the head of the table. I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 manila envelopes. I slid the first one across the table, right next to Chloe's wine glass. She snatched it up eagerly, expecting a cashier's check for $20,000. She opened it, but as her eyes scanned the top page, her smirk completely vanished. What is this? She demanded, her voice cracking. That, I said, my voice echoing clearly across the silent room, is a certified copy of the county land deed, along with 5 years of paid property tax receipts. As you can see, there is only one name on the title of this house, mine. I bought this property outright 5 years ago to save Mom and Dad from foreclosure. You don't own a single brick here, Chloe, and you never did. The dining room descended into absolute, suffocating silence. Chloe stared at the deed in total disbelief, her mouth hanging open as she tried to process the black and white text. This is a fake, she stammered, her voice rising in panic.
Mom, Dad.
Tell her she's lying. My mother looked frantically at my dad, waiting for him to deny it. But Dad couldn't keep up the lie any longer. He dropped his head into his hands, letting out a heavy, defeated sigh. It's true, Chloe, he whispered, his voice trembling. 5 years ago, Clara paid off the entire mortgage. She owns the house. The color drained from Chloe's face. Marcus and his parents exchanged horrified, embarrassed glances across the table. Marcus stood up slowly, clearing his throat. "I think we should leave," he said quietly, motioning for his parents to stand. Within 2 minutes, they had gathered their coats and practically sprinted out the front door, leaving Chloe's grand ambitions in complete ruins. With the guests gone, Chloe turned on me, her eyes wild with rage. "You ruined my life. You humiliated me in front of Marcus's family. You humiliated yourself the second you tried to extort me for $20,000, I replied coldly. I reached into my bag, pulled out the second manila envelope, and tossed it onto the table. "That is an official 30-day notice to quit drafted by my attorney. Since none of you own this property, you have 30 days to pack your things and vacate my house. If you wish to stay, Chloe, you will sign a formal lease agreement, and rent will be due on the 1st of every month." The fallout over the following month was fast and decisive. Realizing that her rich fiancé's family now saw her as a scheming fraud, Chloe's engagement quickly crumbled. Humiliated and left with no leverage, she packed her bags and moved into a cramped, noisy one-bedroom apartment across town, finally forced to pay her own way in the world. As for my parents, the cold reality of their favoritism finally broke through their pride. They apologized, not with hollow words, but with real tears and an admission of how unfairly they had treated me for years. I didn't throw them out. Instead, Arthur drafted a formal occupancy agreement. They could stay in the home rent-free for the rest of their lives, provided they paid their own utilities and respected my boundaries unconditionally. Standing in the quiet backyard of the home I had worked so hard to protect, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I'd carried since childhood. I was no longer the invisible, reliable daughter waiting for approval. I was a woman who knew her worth, held her ground, and safeguarded her future. Blood might make you family, but respect is what keeps you under the same roof. And if anyone in your life ever tries to make you feel like a guest in your own hard-earned life, remember that you always have the power to write your own ending.